Hello and welcome. I'm Maulik Sailor, founder and CEO of Notchup. And today I'm joined with an interesting guest, and we're going to talk about something very interesting, an alternative way for you to get some of your top innovations publicized, some of your problems solved, and also attract some of the best talent out there in the market. So it's a very interesting topic. And the guest today, we have Archie Webb, who is an agile coach and delivery lead as a consulting company called Mindera, if I got that pronunciation right. Recently, they hosted a hackathon for one of the very well-known online and offline retailer here in the UK. And we're going to talk all about that. Welcome, Archie. How are
Thanks for
you
having
doing,
me.
man?
Yeah, all good. Yeah, all good. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Yeah. How
Cool.
you
Good
doing?
to see you, man. I think we connected at that AI event, and it was really interesting to know about your experiences and the work that you are doing. Why don't you start with your background for for our audience to build some context around that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Sure. My background, I started in project management. Yeah, so traditional kind of project management at the start of my career for GlaxoSmithKline, which is a pharmaceutical and Virgin Trains, and then I moved to a fintech called Icon Solutions, and then that's where I kind of got my first exposure into kind of product, kind of software development and those sort of things. So I spent 4 to 5 years in the fintech. So I was kind of doing various kind of agile coaching, kind of head of delivery, scrum master roles in there. And then, like you mentioned, I recently, well, not recently, but moved to Mindera. I moved to Mindera 4 and a bit years ago now. I moved in kind of like an agile coaching delivery lead role at the moment. So yeah, I've been supporting kind of various of their retail clients since being there, but also been helping out with Mindera building out their new kind of agile offering as well that they've got for the market, which kind of covers various things around kind of transformations, holding maturity assessments, also kind of holding kind of hackathons like this talk that's going to be around, holding squad resets and that sort of stuff for clients and those sort of things. So helping them internally kind of building out that agile offering as well. So yeah, that's kind of where I am at the moment on that journey from project management to kind of agility and those sort of things. And then yeah, that's me kind of career wise. And then outside of work, kind of really enjoy running, yeah, like playing golf and sometimes watching West Ham play football. So every so often. So yeah, that's kind of what I do kind of personally, and that's where I am from a career point of view. So
Cool, man. Wonderful. Right. And I believe Mindera, consult with a lot of clients here in the UK, and you have been with one of these clients. Like, we're going to talk about. Plus, would you mind sharing some info about the client? Only the public info, not anything confidential.
what's that? Sorry, say that again.
Uh, you want to share something about your client, like who is the client, the space they operate, and the challenges in those spaces, like, in their market segment that they operate, without going too much confidential.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so they're a kind of a supermarket retailer in the UK, one of the biggest. So yeah, they sell uh, kind of groceries and those sort of things, but they also have kind of a department store and that sort of stuff. So yeah, there's many retailers like you said that Mindera support. But yeah, that's kind of the context of the client that we were helping for on this occasion. So yeah, it's a British kind of retailer in
Yeah.
the UK.
Cool. Now, corporate hackathons, yes, it's a well-known concept. A lot of companies tend to do, but I've not seen a lot of companies in the UK execute, a lot of hackathons, right? So why don't we first define what is an hackathon from your point of view?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, good question. So I see it as a hackathon is a good way. So if you've got a problem statement or some sort of vision that you're trying to solve, a hackathon is a way of getting a group of people, whether it's 5 people, 10 people, 100 plus people, for example, to look into that problem that you're trying to solve and come up with solutions or kind of mini prototypes to that problem statement that you're trying to solve. So yeah, like I said, it's all around getting a group of people trying to solve and build or hack a solution, whether it's a prototype or something else to a certain problem statement. Yeah. So
That's good. That's good. Why did your client wanted to host one? What was the thought process, and the reasoning behind doing one?
yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, good question. So I think it's kind of AI is quite new for everyone, right? Still, it's fairly new, and they didn't know how to kind of kickstart that journey, for example. So that was kind of the reason to hold a hackathon, to try and kind of springboard and kind of kick something into the right direction and those sort of things. So that was kind of where they were coming from to start off with. But the other main reason is they wanted to, obviously we see AI, and I think many people see, in the client that we're working for sees kind of AI as a how, right? A solution. And so they wanted to kind of explore how they could use AI to solve certain customer problems that they had, and they wanted to build products to solve that problem. So they wanted to see how AI as a how could be a solution for that. And also they wanted to, not just from a customer problem solving point of view, but they also wanted to see how they could kind of improve developer experience or make teams more efficient and those sort of things. So that was kind of the two main reasons, the kind of solving customer problems, but also how do we improve developer experience and make our teams more quicker and efficient going forward. So those are the two main problems. They didn't know what ideas that they wanted to pursue, for example. So they didn't know whether AI could solve a certain idea, for example, or they didn't know what sort of customer problems could be solved by AI, for example. So they wanted to use this hackathon as a way of doing that. And they also didn't know how could AI solve certain problems, and whether there's an actual benefit for solving that customer problem or using AI as a solution to solve that customer problem. So they wanted to use a hackathon as a quick way to learn and kind of that whole classic fail fast, to see if there's any actual feasibility in any of the quick ideas that they were trying to prototype and get feedback on very quickly as part of this event. So those are kind of the three main reasons why they wanted to hold a hackathon in the first place.
Cool. And was that initiated by Mindera as a consultant to the company, or somebody internal to the client basically came up with the idea of hosting the hackathon? What was the thought process going on there?
In terms of asking Mindera to help with them with that and that sort
Or
of stuff.
basically, who suggested, right? Like, let's say, I imagine a corporate innovation department, or head of innovation thinking about, hey, I don't know what to do next. This AI is buzzing along. How do we adopt that in our business? Maybe we brainstorm. Or maybe somebody suggested, hey, you know what? Why don't we just ask everybody and host an hackathon? What was the thought process? I'm guessing here, but would be good to know, from your point of view, what actually happened before reaching to that decision.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think it was driven from kind of engineering and product and delivery from the retail client perspective, right? So it was like the leads of that. They saw where the industry is going in terms of AI. They didn't want to kind of get left behind. So they have a pot of money, for example, that they want to invest into solving customer problems with AI or upskilling in AI and that sort of stuff. So it actually was driven from many people, not just the leadership, but there's the whole making this happen all come from the leadership, making sure there was budget, time and space for it. So it was driven from the leadership downwards, because obviously they've noticed where the market trend is. And then, that's obviously engaged with some of the partners, obviously Mindera in this occasion, into help them with that. That, funny enough, that was part of the offering. So I mentioned earlier in the introductions that we offer an accelerator offering as part of our agile service at Mindera. So as part of that is we help kind of set up and organize hackathons for our clients. So that's why we got engaged from our client, because they knew we offered it as that service and they wanted our support with kind of the organization and set up of that hackathon, helping kind of provide kind of advice in terms of setting up the environments and those sort of things. So that's kind of where it came from the leadership, from the client side, but also from the offering that we provide to clients, our existing clients.
Okay, cool. And organizing a hackathon is all about getting enough minds in the room together and setting them free, as you say, without really thinking about your internal operating environments or anything else. That's the whole point. You want as many wild ideas to come true as possible. So what's your blueprint there? How did you set up the hackathon? What was the process look like to get people in and actually execute one?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so I think we did it kind of fairly quickly. So it was kind of, we were engaged kind of March time, April time, and they were like, right, we want to hold one in June in the summer and that sort of stuff. So we actually only had kind of like 8 weeks to actually to set it up. So in terms of like good practice, or what we followed in terms of the lead up of organising that hackathon, is first of all, we kind of had a kickoff, and as part of that kickoff week, we made sure we had like a working group or an organisation group who was helping organise that. So it was kind of formed, and what we'd do, we'd have a kind of weekly check-in meeting once a week where we'd kind of set our goals and next steps and actions of what we wanted to achieve that. So yeah, that was kind of, the first week was kind of all around kickoff, making sure we had kind of a cross-functional working group who had all the skill sets that we needed to kind of make sure the event was a success, for example. So we had that. The second week was all around, I mentioned before how important it is, but defining the problem statement. So we wanted to go, we didn't want to have, we want to have a hackathon around AI because of AI, right? We needed to have a clear kind of problem statement from a company point of view. And also we needed to understand that we were resolving customer problems. We're trying to direct the hackathon around a customer problem rather than just using AI for AI. So the second week was all around defining that problem statement. So one of our clients who set up this hackathon we wanted to, it was all around improving customer experience, using a hackathon as a springboard to foster innovative ideas, solve customer problems, encourage better collaboration, and understand the art of the possible. So that was kind of their statement. And like we said before, they wanted to use AI to kind of improve customer experience and improve team productivity. So that was kind of their problem statement that they reached during that time. And then, yeah, kind of in those follow-on weeks, we were setting up the foundation. So we were kind of setting up the hackathon event meeting invites, a bit of housekeeping and those sort of things. And then week 4, we had ideation, an ideation session. So this was really important. So this is where we started to come up with ideas which would potentially solve that problem statement that we defined in week 2. And so we had our own AI assessment framework, which assessed various different things around, was there enough data? Does it resolve the customer problem? How quick would it be to potentially build that solution, for example, to solve that customer problem? So we had our own assessment framework that we used to come up with a list of validated kind of ideas that we could take into the hackathon event. So yeah, I think that was quite important to kind of go through that kind of triaging process as a group with people participating, that sort of stuff, just to validate whether those ideas were worthwhile and stuff. So, and then from there, we formed the team. So we kind of sent out various kind of sign up links and that sort of stuff. And what we did is we formed the teams against the ideas that come out of the ideation session. So there was a pool of like 70 ideas that come out of ideation. I think we decided and whittled them down to 7 ideas in total. So what we did was form teams against those 7 ideas, which would go into that hackathon event, for example. So we just made sure each of the teams had cross-functional skills. So we made sure they had a front-end developer, back-end developer, UX UI developer, a designer if needed, and those sort of things. So what we did, we kind of did a bit of kind of support and that sort of stuff in terms of kind of allocating teams to certain ideas just to make sure they had all the skill sets. We did that. Like we said, we did some kind of tech setup just to make sure we could hit the ground running. So we made sure we set up kind of environments and repos and repositories for the teams leading up to the event. The client used Vertex AI in the end, so they connected to that. So we did that in leading up to the event just to make sure it was as smooth and it didn't waste half a day for teams setting that up on their own, for example. So we did a bit of tech setup, and then there was a few kind of preparation activities that we did. We did some watch parties where we got on a call with everyone participating to watch certain videos around AI to do a certain kind of upskill, and everyone had a baseline of skill sets going into the event and that sort of stuff. And then we were pretty much there to hold the event. We had 3 days of hacking, a half a day of demos and presentations on the last day, and then after that there was a load of post kind of wash up event activities where I met yourself, where we kind of spoke at conferences about it. We kind of stored repositories, materials for future hackathons going forward, closed down the environments that we use so we weren't getting charged for that hackathon, for the environments that we set up and that sort of stuff. So kind of that was the journey that we went on to kind of leading up to the event.
So basically, what I'm hearing is that you can't just call it hackathon, right? I mean, you got to do a lot of homework, right? You got to prep your environment, you got to communicate out to your teams, you got to provide them with some working guidelines and so on. But I've also seen, sometimes companies kind of go completely wild. They like this I've seen mainly from companies that develop some kind of SDKs or APIs, and they say, okay, here is our SDK or API, and build whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
Completely open-ended, right? And you never know. Sometimes something could come out of it, sometimes nothing will come out of it, or the things that come out is probably not relevant to you, but it gives you a lot more insight on how your platform or APIs could be used in the real world scenarios and so on. So I think what we are saying here is there are always different ways of doing it. Either you narrow the whole hackathon down to a particular topic that you want people to collaborate with, or you want to keep it completely open-ended where people may come up with any sorts of solutions and ideas, right?
Yeah.
I do want to ask you a question around that, right? Sometimes when you run this hackathon, right, and the ideas and the solutions you get, in my opinion, there are kind of three baskets to that. The middle basket is like, okay, you know what, good, interesting, believable, yes, I can see that happening, whatever, right? And then you have the two other sides of the basket. One, what a utter disaster this is. That's a total crap. Why would even somebody think about all that, right? And you have the other side where, damn, we never thought about this. That's such an interesting idea. It's amazing. It's so creative. It's out of this world, right? Mind blown, basically, right? Would you mind sharing any of those ideas, ideas that fall in those section buckets that you saw, maybe at this hackathon or some other place, if you don't mind sharing, provided
Yeah.
that they are not confidential.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. I think the reason why on this example that we're talking about here in terms of organizing this 100+ person AI hackathon,
Mm,
I think the reason
mm,
why we had to be a little bit more, not huge amounts of effort, but a little bit more organized in the planning, like you said, I think it's because of the scale of the hackathon, because it was quite big. So I think that there was more confidence and comfortability just being a bit more on top of the organization leading up to them, because there were so many people involved. But I think you are right, there's pros and cons for each. You can, like you said, just chuck everything up in the air, let people self-organize on the day and go for it, and that's actually fine as well. So I don't think there's any wrong either option, but I think that's just worth explaining why they went down more of the organization, making sure there were ideas, triage, problem statements, because it was so big. But I think you can do both, and both have kind of valid reasons. And like you said, it's interesting when you just throw up something in the idea and see what happens. In terms of ideas, I think, there was huge amounts of quite mind-blowing kind of ideas that come out of it, like the inspiration. It's amazing what happens when you get a group of people with no slack, no distractions, fully focused on 3 days of building a prototype and that sort of stuff. So some of the ideas were really cool in terms of, there was ones around SEO improvements. There was kind of how could we describe a product more better on the website, for example, which would generate more visits from Google, for example. So there was a product that was built, part of the prototype, around where people could say, I'm looking to get a description for this product ID. They put their product ID from the website they were doing, and then it would generate a description for them that would hit all the points from an SEO factor. So that was a really cool idea. They had another product that they had was around recipes, which would help customers plan for their week in terms of what meals they would, and then auto generate that to a basket and those sort of things. So there was some really cool ideas that come out of that. So they were the good things. I'm
yeah.
trying to think of bad ones. Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's any bad ones that have come out of it. To be honest, I haven't seen any bad ideas. I think, on the whole, especially part of the event that we're talking about now, that they were all kind of very, really like valid ideas and good kind of prototypes that were built, really. So
Yeah, that's pretty good. Talking of bad ideas, I generally think, sometimes the bad ideas are actually really good. Some of the startups as well, a lot of startups actually, the ideas were rejected by many, many times, right? And people didn't believe in that. but eventually they ended up becoming quite a big success, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think sometimes even the bad ideas are pretty good. You just need to basically think it through. What can you do with that?
Yeah.
Never mind. Let's move on. Like, let's say if I were a company with a big tech operations here in the UK or wherever, right? Doesn't matter. If I want to host a hackathon, let's say, what tips would you give? How would I go about doing that to get the best out of it?
Yeah, good question. I think I mentioned before, I think I do feel like there needs to be a purpose and a why for holding that hackathon, right? So I think
Mm,
it's very important to be clear on why you're holding that event, what problems you're trying to solve, and that kind of gives a good kind of guide rails and visions of some of the ideas that come out of the hackathon and what you're trying to achieve from that hackathon, right? So I think that's always a good thing to have. You're not just having a hackathon for a hackathon, right? There needs to be a reason behind it. So I think that's a really good thing to start with. So I think that's really important. I think it's I've seen a lot of hackathons where you've only had one day to hack, and kind of engineers and teams kind of just get into it and then they've got to stop, right? So I would always recommend having at least the bare minimum of kind of 2 days, full 2 days hacking, and then a half a day of demo presentations. Ideally, if you can, be nice to have 3 days hacking, but I think at the minimum you need at least 2 days of kind of hacking and building prototypes as part of that hackathon. So I'd recommend that. I thought it was quite useful, especially because AI was quite new. But I suppose in general hackathons as well, I think it's quite good to have like some sort of ideation leading up to the event. I think it doesn't have to have a significant amount of time behind it. You could probably
mm,
get away with holding a 2 hour
mm,
mini workshop, whether you did 1, 2, 4 and all, or a different kind of ideation sort of technique, for example. But I think it's always useful to hold just a mini workshop coming up with ideas that can potentially be kind of built upon or prototyped as part of the hackathon that potentially can solve that problem statement. So I think the ideation part is quite important. Other things that are important that needed question. I think cross-functional skills. I mentioned that quite a few times. So I think it's important to people participating in the event to try and share the skill sets around. So everyone has the relevant skill sets that are needed to build a prototype, right? So you kind of want a front end developer, back end developer, like I said previously. I think it's very important to have that cross-functional skill set in each of the teams. You don't want one skill set loaded in a different team and another skill set loaded in another team. So I think it's important to share that balance for the teams in the event. And I said earlier, I think it was quite useful having that as part of the event team that were organising it as well. So it's quite useful having variations of different skill sets and disciplines providing their viewpoint leading up to the event. So I would other things I think were useful. There was we did the setup of environments and repos connecting to Vertex AI. You don't have to do that. That's not a mandatory, but it just made it more valuable and allowed the teams to actually focus on building the prototype straight away rather than spending half a day as part of the hackathon setting up their environments and those sort of things. So that's a nice to have, but it just made the value of hacking straight away more important. I think generally you need kind of someone in that, or whoever's organising it, you need someone that's kind of good at kind of being organised, proactive and communicating out and that sort of stuff, making sure things are getting done. So I think that was quite important, having that kind of weekly check-in, someone making sure the goals and actions that you're trying to achieve leading up to the event, organising it, are getting done, but also keeping people participating in the event informed of what's going on, this is how it's going to run, this is when the demos are and that sort of stuff. I think you need like a natural person, that one person kind of going out there and kind of being proactive and leading it from start to finishing and making sure everyone's informed and get things done and those sort of things leading up to event. I think that was important. And I think this is the last point I was going to make, which is important to consider, is I think a lot of people and companies have hackathons, generate great ideas, but actually don't follow up on those ideas after the actual event, if that makes sense. So I
yeah,
think it's,
I've seen that over and over. You spend so much time and energy, and then something good comes out, and then you never follow it through, right? You say, yeah, that was a nice event. Let's go back to our day, day-to-day priorities.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of, you need to make sure as part of the post wash up or activities after the event, you need to make sure that you're making those ideas that come out of the hackathon that look like they could bring value to the company and also our customers, right? That you try and make those a reality. So you need to make sure there's funding, right? You need to make sure there's dedicated teams or the headspace to pursue those ideas. So just, don't have a hackathon event and let it drop. You need to make sure you're putting stuff in place afterwards to make sure they become a reality, right? And you make sure you build the ones that provided the most promise during the event. So make sure the ideas become a reality. That's definitely a priority as well. So
That's wonderful. In the hindsight, right? I mean, hindsight is always a good thing, right? I mean, having done quite a few hackathons, what would you recommend? Like, let's say somebody wanting to host one, what are the positive outcomes that you can get out from these hackathons?
Yeah, I think it's I think I mentioned earlier, like for this example, we're talking around the 100+ person hackathon that we set up. No, to be honest, it generated a pool of 70 ideas, product ideas that we could go out and build that would solve various customer problems, if that makes sense. So I think in terms of a hackathon, it really generates a huge amount of different ideas that you could actually pursue that could solve customer problems, or you could offer new products to your customers and the industry to kind of get that kind of niche and set yourself above the rest of the market. So I think it's a really good idea to come up with ideas and product ideas to build. I think it's a good space to improve morale and happiness of your workplace and the people that work in your workplace, for example. So the feedback that we got was really positive from the events. People actually really enjoyed getting away from their day-to-day event and spending time with different people and spending focused time on solving a problem and building a solution. So that actually improved kind of rapport and morale within the workplace and that sort of stuff. We had at the demos, at the final day demos, we had a kind of lunch and drinks afterwards. So it was kind of, we made it as a big kind of event and those sort of things. So I think we saw it improve kind of morale. People enjoyed it. People want to do another one next year and that sort of stuff. So I think that's another thing. I think it's a good way. What other positive things? Why you should hold a hackathon? I think it's a good way for, if you're a stakeholder who own budgets, I think it's a good way to get the most out of your budgets in a quick fashion. So if you're trying to resolve a quick problem, or you're trying to resolve a problem and you want all the focus and want quick results to see potentially ideas that could solve that problem, I think it's a really good, fast and quick way to get a lot of people's minds focusing on a problem. And we saw that, I think, stakeholders that provided budget for the event got a lot of value out of it and very satisfied of how far their money went in business terms, if that makes sense. So I think that was good. And I think, if you're trying to achieve or solve a problem quickly, it's a good way to kind of get traction on that straight away. So I think that was good. Other reasons, it improves skill sets. It's another way of increasing skill sets of people working within the organization, for example. So there was a quality engineer that did front end development as part of the event, and he now wants to pursue a career in front end development. So that's kind of encouraged people to try different things within the event to increase their skill sets. As part of the event, people now have a better understanding of how AI works and that sort of stuff. So hackathon events is actually a good way to train up your staff in certain areas if there's a particular area that you want to go in. So I would say that's some of the main key things really why you'd hold one.
Yeah, so we, on Notchup, there is like a feature. We actually built an hackathon feature on our platform for precisely this reason. Some of the reasons you are talking about, companies want to engage with their talent pool and all. But the reason why we built was slightly different. And we normally recommend our clients to use hackathon as a way to filter out future talents, right? So let's say you there are something you want to develop in near future. You're exactly not sure how to do it or what to do it. Why don't you set up as an hackathon on the platform and let the community? So we got close to 50,000 talent on the platform. So let them solve it, right? And if let's say somebody comes up with an interesting solution, you may not necessarily want to implement that in your business, but at least that people are interested in what you're doing, and some people are actually pretty good in coming up with solutions. And those are the people that you may actually want to hire in your organization. So we build that as a way to attract better talent and filter them out for jobs. So like an alternative way to recruit rather than going through the whole posting a job, asking them to do tests and all. And most good engineers actually don't want to do any testing. This is like an ironic situation. You want to hire the best engineers, but the best engineers don't want to do any testing, right? So how would you know that they are best, right? So that's an alternative way we thought, you can actually engage with them and get them interested in what you're doing. So yeah, man, I mean, that's pretty good. And I normally recommend, doing hackathons to big companies as well. Normally it's done startup weekend, startup founders doing a hackathon events, trying to find a team and come up with a POCs to fundraise and whatever. But I think there's definitely a room for bigger companies to do that. And especially here in the UK, I don't really see many companies doing it regularly. And I'm a big advocate of that for them to do it more. And hopefully, listening to your podcast, this episode, I'm pretty sure that a lot of our audience will find a few more reasons on why they should convince their stakeholders or senior management to do one, right? Just mindful of our time, Archie, I think I'll start wrapping up this episode. But before we end, there are a few questions that we tend to ask like all of our guests, right? I mean, they're generic questions, so nothing too scary. But I would like to ask you that as well, right? And there are a little bit of personal questions, right? So the first one is fairly easy, right? I mean, who do you think has impacted you most in your life or career, right? I mean, who is one person, again, alive or dead? It does not need to be just a person alive right now.
Yeah, I think from like a career perspective, I think I've had as my career's gone on, there's been influential people. So I started off my career at GSK, and there was a manager there who I had, or a lead there I had, and he kind of gave me a lot of time and gave me kind of feedback of where I can improve, and also gave me positive feedback. And I left kind of that organisation feeling more confident about actually I could kind of fulfill my aspirations in my career. So I think that was kind of a key person so early on in my career, to have someone who spent the time with me and gave me the confidence to go forward. So I think that was quite useful. I think, like in my family, I've had my kind of father and uncle who have kind of set up their own organisation. So I think I find it quite inspiring when people go out and set up their own organisations, for example, and start building out their own companies. I think that's kind of there's an element of risk taking there, right? Moving away from your kind of normal corporate job and going away and building your own organisation. I kind of admire a lot of people that kind of take that risk to do that. So I think there's been various people who have done that in my career, who are in my life and those sort of things, which is good. I think in terms of where I am, in terms of kind of delivery and being an agile coach, there was someone who I met in Icon when I started off moving from project management more into that. I had someone who was very experienced in that kind of industry, in that kind of role and skill set, and he was my mentor and kind of told me all the kind of foundations of what I needed to know in terms of doing the role and that sort of stuff. So that person there was very influential in that. So yeah, I think there's various people. It kind of staggered from my start of my career, in the middle, and kind of where we are at the moment. There's always different people that kind of inspired me. But yeah, it's a difference of kind of people from career, family. But yeah, mainly people obviously that set up their own business as well. That kind of really inspires me to kind of push further as well. So
Cool, man. Great insight, right? I hope you also eventually take the plunge and start your own thing, and it's scary. I did mine, about 15 years ago, and I think it was like looking back, I think maybe it was a stupidity. I did it because I wanted to do it without really thinking through on how I'm going to do it and what I'm going to do it. But you know what? It has been ups and downs, and life has turned out to be all right. Not too bad, not too great, but it has been all right.
Good. Good.
Anyway, who is one person, again, living or dead, that you would like to meet?
Yeah, I think it's who would I like to meet? I think as a kid, I was very much into WWE, the wrestling and that sort of stuff. Yeah, my favourite was Dwayne Johnson, The Rock. I think it was, when I was growing up, it was either either Stone Cold Steve Austin or The Rock, and I kind of favoured The Rock. So yeah, he's kind of my childhood. So I've never met him, but would like to meet him at some point. It'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty good, man. Actually, he's also an inspiring guy, right? I mean,
Yeah,
from his childhood to becoming a WWE entertainer and becoming the actor now. He's one of the highest paid actor actually in Hollywood, right? So very very inspiring journey that he
yeah,
had as well. Um,
yeah.
cool. I wish you good luck for you to be able to meet him. Hopefully soon. So maybe when he's coming for the premieres here in London, maybe you can just go and queue up and try to meet him. At least you might get an autograph.
Yeah, I think it's like you said. At the end of the day, I don't really get into I don't really get starstruck, if that makes sense, for famous people. But like what I do admire, like you said, on the journey they've gone on, like it requires probably a lot of very much discipline, right? Of being focused on what they're trying to achieve, being disciplined every day, and probably getting up very early in the mornings and that sort of stuff. Being disciplined with their lifestyle, and yeah, I think it's more that, like you said, it's seeing where the Rock's gone in terms of wrestling, and then in his acting career and that sort of stuff, he must have been very disciplined and worked hard to achieve kind of where he's got to, right? Which I admire. So.
Yeah, totally,
Yeah,
totally. Who would have imagined, whenever he was doing that WWE, that this guy will end up becoming highest paid actor in the Hollywood, right?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, indeed, yeah,
so
indeed.
yeah, yeah, cool. Anyways, last one. Who do you think we should invite to this podcast?
Yes, there's an engineer that I know, quality engineer called Mark Whittingham. Yeah, so he loves AI and that sort of stuff, and he recently published a book called Software Testing with Generative AI. So yeah, I think his book around was like how he uses Gen AI with personal projects and that sort of stuff, around how he expands, automates, enhance testing with LLMs. So yeah, he's very enthusiastic about AI and that sort of stuff, especially from a quality testing perspective. So yeah, I recommend kind of reaching out to him and seeing whether you can get him on the podcast. That'd be pretty cool.
Okay, hopefully I'll make the reach out and hopefully we'll get him on one of the episodes. So cool, man, cool. I think that's about it today. I think we are good on time. So why don't we wrap up today? It's been great having you here as one of our guests for the podcast. Loved hearing your story about setting up this hackathon as one of the largest retailer here in the UK. Your tips about setting up the event and following up through the event was pretty useful. And, please, I do recommend all the senior stakeholders who may be listening to this episode, if you think that you want to supercharge innovation in your organizations, if you want to engage more with your talent community and also attract quality talents to your organization, I do recommend hosting a hackathon. Right. And yeah, man. So thanks a lot, Archie,
Thanks
for
for having
joining
me.
us today, and all the very best for your career. And
Lovely.
hopefully, you'll set up your own business fairly soon.
Never know. You never know. You never know.
You never say never.
No, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Yeah. And lovely speaking to you.
Cool. Thank you, Archie.